When 9/11 happened, I was in the first grade, and I was actually in a private Christian school. And I just remember a teacher coming in our classroom and telling our teacher, you know, we need to get to the chapel, we need to have prayer, something happened. And they let us go to the chapel, and we prayed, and then we went home early. And my mom picked me up, and we went to my dad's job, and we were watching the TV, and I think it was CNN or MSNBC, and they just kept showing the footage over and over, and I didn't understand what was happening, but I saw my dad start crying, and that was the first time that I'd ever seen my dad cry like that. And so it just kind of struck me like this is real, like this is actually happening.
I remember going home and my mom spoke to me, and she said that she was very blessed, but we were also scared because she was actually in the World Trade Center a month ago and was in the very top floor, and she was just blessed that she wasn't one of the ones that was in there September 11th.
I was actually at the dentist office whenever we heard about it over the radio, and it was such a shock. I remember two of the receptionists at the office in Charlotte were actually just like appalled, and I didn't really understand what was going on because my dad traveled a lot for his business, and so I was like, oh my gosh, was my dad on an airplane? But he was.
I didn't really understand what it was. Like, I understood that it was bad, but I guess I didn't really get what was actually happening. But September 11th is actually my parents' anniversary, so they had plans to go out and eat, and I remember my mom calling my dad, and she was actually really calm, but you could kind of tell that it was upsetting her. But so he came home early from work, which like never happened, and then we all just stayed home and watched the news, and they were calling family.
We ended up going outside for a ceremony around the flag, had a moment of silence and prayer or stuff like that, and they were talking about what had happened, and we went back to class, and then went home, and ended up watching it again on TV, and actually trying to figure out what was happening, because at the time I was only like 7 or 8 years old, so I really didn't understand a whole lot.
Well, my parents just got home, like all the kids were outside playing, and they just told us, you know, that the Twin Towers in New York fell. I had no idea there was even Twin Towers in New York, so I mean, it didn't really have that much impact on me, but you could tell it affected my mom and dad a lot.
I definitely felt kind of like nervous just because I didn't know what was going on, and definitely scared at some point just because it was such a big thing, and I kind of felt like I needed to like not let it show that I'm scared until my mom and my dad are like upset about it. So you kind of had to like grow up there for a little bit and just kind of like deal with it.
My family was just everybody. It wasn't even like a day to be joking around like we usually do, like how my family jokes around, but it was just a downtime. It was just like, okay, this is what happens. If something happens, we need to make sure everything is all right, make sure my family was okay.
Me realizing everyone else that like you're never completely safe, even though you may feel like you are, and anything can happen to anyone, even though you won't expect it. And it's something you have to be aware of, and you have to be more careful these days than you used to have to be. So you have to be.
I think about it all the time because I have a cousin, he's in the military, he's overseas right now, but I think about it every day, like if something could happen.
Definitely made me more aware because it shows me that things like that can happen, that all of a sudden one day something that crazy can happen, and like even if it's like, it's kind of almost like weather's natural and it's going to happen, and sometimes it seems like stuff like that's just bound to happen, and I don't know, it just makes you more aware to think that, you know, one day something else like that may in fact happen, and you just have to prepare yourself for anything. I do think about 9/11, I do think about terrorism, and I think about ways that our government tries to keep us safe from things like that happening, and I feel like our government is doing a good job of trying to keep us safe, and I'm just really thankful. I'm not happy that 9/11 happened, but in it happening, it kind of helped us to protect ourselves more and to protect the country more. So
It's really easy to see, like, when you go on a plane and stuff, because like we've always grown up having to take your shoes off and like take everything out and get scanned and everything. And I hear like my parents talking about that it wasn't always that way. It's a lot different that way with terrorism for planes and stuff.
Something that like since we've grown up with it, we're kind of almost, it's in the back of our minds all the time, but it's not something that really shocked us because we were so young that like the fact that could happen, it was just kind of became a part of who we were. And so now, like with like Dalton said, that all the airline regulations and everything, it doesn't seem weird almost to us because we didn't experience a time before that.
More security restrictions. Like I went to Mexico when I was 14, and getting through customs was tough, even though we weren't doing anything wrong. It still made you feel almost like you yourself were a criminal and that you were lucky to get through customs. And in reality, it's just they're trying to keep you safe and stuff, but it feels like a hassle, but honestly the restrictions are necessary now.
It's made me less accepting in some ways just because whenever you see people like that, you're automatically, like those thoughts come to your head. But then again, you don't want to group them all together because they're not all the same, so you can't just judge one person by their group of people.
It's kind of opened my eyes to kind of like, they may be different than me, but I mean, we're all still humans, and I mean, I don't know, it just kind of makes, I guess I've been more accepting.
You got to tell yourself you can't judge people just off their looks because they might be good people, but after September 11th, you kind of puts a little bit of a doubt in your mind, and you're always wondering whether they are or they aren't.
I think that after learning more about each like culture, I think it's not as easy to be like prejudiced or racist or judgmental of other cultures or other parts of the world, because we can't just judge a certain group of people by the way one person acted.
I think our generation definitely has to be more tolerant because, we go to school with them, and, I have nothing against them. I just think that they might look different, they might talk different, they might think differently than we do, but they're still like people, and they went through this just as much as we did.